Okay, with that much said, I mean, there's a lot more I could say about this. As you probably know, I could talk about this all day long. I'll just end it with basically saying that I do think that I know who the aliens are, and I think they're associated with the realm of the demonic. And past centuries, I think people knew this to a certain degree, because UFOs are nothing new and aliens are nothing new. It's just they called them by different names in different centuries, right? Fairies and gnomes, things of that nature. They were always identified with demons. They even had the incubi and succubi that were destructive demons, okay, in the Middle Ages and beyond, that would even get involved with sexual experiments with people and things of that nature. The problem is today is that we think they're all good. They're still little men in most cases, but now they claim to be coming out of flying saucers.
Aby w nią wejść, na przykład historia ma być przejęta przez masonerię, bo ona uczy myślenia o regułach rządzących przemijaniem, czasem. Kto ma przeszłość, ten ma przyszłość. Takie hasło wielokrotnie się pojawia.
My very special guest here, you can see him on the screen, is Al Mathews. Al became the centerpiece, I can use that word in our film, The Watchmen Chronicles, in their own words, UFOs are real. Al has been abducted many times, has had lots of close encounters with the first, second, third, and fourth kind. And in the film, I'll just sort of give it away, Al became a Christian after a certain encounter that he had. And he called me, and actually through Gordy Tong, and we conversed, and we gave him some materials, and Al came to know Jesus. And since then, the abductions have completely stopped. So we're we're not afraid or ashamed of saying that there's someone greater than these entities who come in and do things that most people would look at as absolutely abhorrent. But Al is with us today because he encountered a woman fairly recently, to the best of my knowledge, and I'll just let him tell the story. So, Al, what happened?
The high strangeness never ends, L.A. Nice to chat with you again. Once again, I was doing a move last week for a couple of girls out in Vancouver. One of the girls I had met before, she was not there for the move. She was at work. So the other daughter was there. She was about 18 years old, and the mom was there to help her. Just awesome people. The mother was so nice, very polite. And as usual, what I do is I like to, start up a conversation. Where are you originally from? How long have you lived in BC? She told me, I lived in Ottawa for a bunch of years. I was in the government. And I go, oh, really? I was raised in Ottawa and lived there for 34 years and had a place in the Gatineaus. And she goes, oh, why did you move out here? And I said, you really want me to tell you? She goes, yeah, why not? And I told her, do you believe in UFOs? And she's there standing beside her daughter. Her daughter was probably about 18. And they looked at each other and smiled. And then she said, yes, I believe in UFOs. Why? What happened? And I said, I had multiple abductions. I met a hybrid that was out here that shape-shifted her eyes. And once again, they looked at each other and she goes, well, I was married to a hybrid. And I go, what? And she goes, my husband was not fully human. And I go, you're kidding me. And she goes, no, I'm not kidding you. There's lots of people walking amongst us that are not human.
Let me stop you right there for a second, Al. You just said walking amongst us, and that's really interesting because that's the title of Dr. David Jacobs' book, Walking Amongst Us. And Dr. David Jacobs has been, involved in the alien abduction and consequent hybrid program for decades. And I realize a lot of people who are watching this going, oh, this is, two guys, L.A. and Al, these guys are off their rockers. I mean, I totally get that. Okay, fine. Don't believe it. But all we know is the phenomenon is real. Dr. Jacobs' book, Walking Amongst Us, and this is after decades of research, states unequivocally that the hybridization, the hybrid program between these entities and human beings have reached a point where they can now pass, the hybrid can pass as fully human. So with that in mind, it's very unnerving, and that ties right into your story. So pick it up there, please.
That actually, I'm not easy to shock anymore. And for out of the blue, for this lady to say that with her daughter standing right there,
sure,
saying, my husband, when he got upset, his eyes would shapeshift. When he got aroused, he would morph. His face would shapeshift. And I'm just like, I had an encounter with this lady, and when she got upset, her eyes shapeshifted. Okay, after she had told me that, her daughter's acting like it was nothing. Her two children, her two daughters, are from this hybrid. So are they indigo children? Are they star children? The lady is 100% of Indian blood. I started questioning her like I do if you're researching this stuff, and I was absolutely shocked. She told me, L.A., she'd been on ships multiple times. She's given birth to 10 hybrid children. And she told me, this blows my mind. As you know, I know a fair bit about this stuff. I've researched it for a long time. She was telling me things like she met the Watchers on one of these ships with Jesus. I go, oh, really? Jesus was on a UFO. And she goes, yeah, there's good aliens and bad aliens. I go, they're not aliens. They're demons and fallen angels. And you wouldn't have Jesus on a UFO with the Greys. And she goes, well, the other beings were Nordic. They were human-looking. Were Palladians. I said, yeah, Nordic, Palladian, same difference. I go, they shapeshift back into the Greys of the reptilians. They're not angels of God. They're fallen. So she just sort of, shook her head, whatever. She goes, I have a couple of questions for you since you know a lot about this. She goes, I have a weird mark on the back of my neck. She goes, in my purse, let me go to my purse. She goes, I'll show you a couple of pictures I took. And she showed me a picture of a scoop mark on the back of her neck. I've seen that many times. She goes, do you know what that's for? They never told me. And I go, they're taking DNA from you.
Right.
They're either making more hybrids or cloning you. Oh, she goes, yeah, I've heard about cloning. And then she showed me a picture, which shocked me. She showed me a picture of her back, covered in bruises, black, purple, blue.
Whoa.
And I go, what's that from? She goes, that's from one of the abductions. I go, how can you say this stuff is good?
Right.
It's shocking, LA.
So let me interrupt you here. So in other words, those bruises would only have been there if she had been beaten and abused.
I don't know what they're from, but she said it was after the abduction encounter.
Right.
And she's had multiple abductions. Then I asked her questions like, you're not channeling these things? And she goes, yes, I'm into Buddhist meditation and channeling. And I go, how do you know what you're channeling?
Right.
She goes, it's all good for the higher purpose.
Let me stop you again there and just bring in the biblical prophetic narrative here. We're told not to channel because, first of all, channeling is an occult. People that are in the occult will use this to bring in an entity. The problem is there's no way to discern whether the entity is malevolent or benevolent. In 99.9999 cases, it is guaranteed malevolent. Number one, we're told not to do this in Scripture. And the reason for this is not allowing anything to come through us. Now, what's interesting is you say, well, how does that work with the Holy Spirit? When the Holy Spirit speaks to us, but the Holy Spirit isn't possessing me or coming through me that way. When people are channeling something, they can do automatic writing, like the psychics in Fatima 100 years ago. And they were writing from right to left. And that's called automatic writing, where this entity would come into a person, possess them, and then take over the hand and write. And, of course, the signature of that was Stella Matutina, the bright morning star. So we're told specifically not to channel, not to be involved in any of these things, because what we're doing is taking in the demonic. Is that a fair statement?
I told her, you're totally opening the door to something you do not know what you're opening the door to. She was telling me things like, the upgrade is coming. It's almost done. There's a higher purpose. We've been chosen. She told me when I told her my horrific encounters, she goes, oh, that's military. That's all my lab. I go, it had nothing to do with the military.
Right.
Nothing. I go, you must be listening to Stephen Greer. You didn't know.
Let me chime in here. You said something which, when we talked several days ago, really piqued my interest. The upgrade is coming. Do you have any idea what she meant by the upgrade is coming?
Oh, totally. This planet, I know people are going to think this is just nuts. There's more and more of these hybrids walking amongst us, and I know it sounds nuts. I've interviewed 3 or 4 people, 2 of them were abductees, that have seen these hybrids, and you can't tell the difference. You just can't. They look totally human, LA. Totally.
And this little chip, which we took out from this guy who had been abducted, he was implanted. I believe it will change the host DNA. And that is the upgrade, where a person will then live 300, 400, 500 years disease-free. Now, that's total conjecture on my part, but these entities, whoever they are, and of course we believe that they're demonic, have spent an enormous amount of time and energy on this program. So when she talks about the upgrade, that rings bells for me. Your thoughts?
Oh, I think that's the mark of the beast.
I do too.
The other thing I have noticed, LA, is when people do channel these entities, you can talk to your blue in the face and giving them evidence. You should be aware of what you're channeling, because these things are very evil, and they tell you the opposite thing. You're here for a higher purpose.
Right.
You've been chosen, this, that, and the other. And if you do properly research, it's the absolute opposite. I have another gentleman, a friend of mine, who used to work at the UFO meetup group in Vancouver. He's channeling these things. He's doing Buddhist meditation. he is now saying he had a past life as a Nazi fighter pilot. Hitler was a great guy. There was no such thing as the Holocaust. Now give me a break. If somebody is actually saying stuff like that through channeling, what's that tell you?
Sure.
They had totally deceived, or they have the spirit guide. I call it possession.
Yeah,
I call it a form of possession. And the other thing, which is very sort of gave me the willies, was she told me they're listening. They're always listening.
There it is.
She goes, they're listening right now.
Right.
Where did that come from?
Exactly.
And when she said that, I go, there's good watchers and bad watchers. And they are listening, and they're watching us. And since they're watching us and listening right now, I said to her, just to let them know, Jesus Christ is returning. Their time is running out. That's what I said.
Good for
and
you.
I told her good luck. But I'm telling you, LA, it's so disappointing that these people are being deceived. The nicest lady you've ever met, her daughter was like a sweetheart, and they're just being deceived. And there's so many New Agers. It's a shame.
Hands 34 to 46.
They take eggs from people, as you can see there. They take sperm from people. Now, this is an interesting little kind of sketch here. The important thing about this sketch is not that they're taking sperm, but that there's an abductee there who has walked in to comfort the person who's having sperm taken. I've heard this many, many times. This is not uncommon. I've heard this from people who say they are comforted and from the comforters. I went into the room and I told this person lying on a table that everything was going to be okay. They said, this is an abductee talking to me. Here's another, this is sperm taking with neural engagement. I showed these same slides last time, so they're new to some of you, but not at all. Where they're staring into a person's eyes. Now the question is, what do you mean staring into a person's eyes? Well, I talked about this in the book The Threat, which is already getting a little bit long in the tooth, but still pretty good. And it talks about how abductees began to say early on that a being would come over to them and stare directly into their eyes at a distance of a few inches or even touching forehead to forehead. And I had no idea what that was. But I have I don't know how many, I stopped counting. Maybe I have 700 cases, something like that. You know, it's ubiquitous. Every abductee has this habit if you do enough sessions. If you do just one session, I'll just skip over it sometimes because it's too sort of profound for them. But this is something that happens to all abductees and almost all the time. And what they do is my guess is, but it's a really good guess, and we have substantial testimonial evidence for this, that they engage the optic nerve, they use the optic nerve as a transit, essentially, as a way into through the brain and into other neurological sites, and they can stimulate whatever neurons they want to. So they can stimulate all sorts of images, they can stimulate memories, they can stimulate feelings, they can do all sorts of stuff. And the problem is that I don't care how close they are, there's a gap between their eye and our eyes. Now, how they get that, and I'm going to use a word that I almost never use, how they get the energy to go through that gap, I don't know. I do not know. That is not, I don't know. I don't get that one. But that's what they do. That's my guess, and I'm sticking by that guess. Because I won't go into all the evidence for it, but there's plenty of it.
Hands 34 to 46.
Next. This would be a middle stage hybrid. You see, this guy here has whites in his eyes, a pointed chin, and slight hair, and he's weird looking. And look at how thin he is, but he's still, but he's almost getting there. And he's pointing out, I think I pointed out last time, this is a street map, and he's giving this woman orders on what to do when the time comes. She will stand on this street and tell people who are panicked or in the streets, it's okay, just walk, come this way, come this way, come this way, everything is okay. That will be her job later. Here's a late stage hybrid. I don't know how good this drawing is. She's wearing sort of hybrid garb here a little bit, but she has actually sort of a full head of hair. Now here's a little secret. I'm not talking about human stage hybrids. If you read the threat, I went to late stage hybrids, and that's where I stopped. But this is not human stage. Human stage is different. So, but she looks pretty good. She could probably pass. Here's another sort of late stage hybrid who has very large pupils, looks like a hunk, and he's wearing some sort of a uniform, which leads people to think that they're American military, and the American government is involved with abducting people and that sort of stuff. But this is in fact a late stage hybrid. Here's a late stage hybrid, a group of them wearing what looks like American military uniforms. Now you don't know whether these hats are confabulation or not. Maybe they're not. But they interrogate the two abductees standing in the middle, and for reasons that we do not know, do not understand. We have no idea why this is. Here's a human stage hybrid. Here's another one. These people look human. Their eyes are not too big. Everything is fine. They got normal haircuts of sorts. They are just human. They're human. They are human. They're 111% human. But they're not 113% human. And that extra 2% means that they can connect neurally into you and control you. That's the one thing they got that we don't have. That makes us a second-class species. Not second-class citizens, second-class species. What I began to hear is this business about hybrids abductees helping hybrids integrate into the society. Now the question is, if this was an integration program, as had been being said for years and years, the question is, how do you do that? How do you do that? It turns out to be a complicated business with different people, different groups having different functions, there's a bureaucracy involved, and there's a series of procedures involved which allow for somebody to move into an apartment with the help of abductees. Because now abductees are coming in saying that they're helping them do this, helping them put furniture together to show where a chair goes there and a couch goes there, and in front of the couch there should be a table, and you should have a TV there, you know, or something like that, so look at it, and how to make a bed, and what a pillow is for, and what goes into a refrigerator, and what goes into a pantry, and the difference between the two, and things like that. And I was hearing this beforehand, but not in a real-time basis. I was hearing this as young kids would come down, hybrid children with a caretaker, into an abductee's home and take a tour of the kitchen, for example. And they would say, "What's this for?" And she'd say, "Well, it's a stove. And you cook things on this, you know, with fire in a pan and all the rest of that stuff." "Well, how come you can cook things on the top of the stove, but there's an inside, and you can cook things on the inside too? Why do you need two things, you know?" Well, she'd have to explain there's a different way of cooking and blah, blah, blah. And then there was, you know, how a spigot works, what the water is for and all that, and why cans don't go into, you know, unopened cans don't go into the refrigerator. And what do you freeze and what don't you freeze? And what is an ice cube, and how does an ice cube feel? And these are all for like 10-year-olds. Now, I'd heard a lot of these things, but this is not real time because they just came down and they're going back up. They're not moving in anywhere. But you get the sense it's going to happen, to say the least. Like I said, everything is pointing to this, and nothing is pointing to the idea that soon they will be going back to their home environment, wherever, whatever, and they will never come back again, which would be my favorite thought. I've never heard that, but what I do hear all the time is soon we'll all be together. It's going to be great, it's going to be wonderful, everybody's going to love it. So I began to put together, I'm actually putting together a book. I've been threatening to do that for years, and I'm still in the threat stage. And of how these beings integrate, what are the trials and the tribulations, what kind of problems do they have, and what's the abductees' roles in them, and et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing we're going to do is see some slides. I say that's an old word. We'll see a PowerPoint presentation. We'll see some digitals of some of the things that I've just talked about, and then we'll have I'll ask a question that has not been answered before. So, and the question will be a real simple question. Okay, so now I take this and I have to point it at something that has a top on it. I'll just point it in that direction. Okay. Oh, okay. What I want to talk about first here is the pecking order, the hierarchy of authority of aliens. Now, the question is, what is an alien and what is a hybrid? And when is there ever an area, a gray area, I may say, of not sure? We're not sure. Now, there's tall, insect-like aliens. People say their heads look like parking meters. People say their heads look like praying mantises. That's the most common phrase used, praying mantis. They're real thin. People don't normally describe a nose or a mouth on them or a vestigial slit or holes. They really look alien. These beings really look alien, really alien. From what we can tell in the abduction phenomenon, as I have seen it, is that they are the order givers, the top of the line, top of the heap.